Tansei, my relatives. My name is Michael Redhead Champagne, and I'm very excited to be sharing my personal story of lived experience in human services with all of you here today. I'm coming at you today from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And we call this place Treaty 1 territory, and we recognize it as the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, including the Innu, including Ojibwe, Dakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We acknowledge that the power that has enabled me to record this video comes from my home community of Treaty 5 region in northern Manitoba, and the water that nourishes all of us in this territory comes from Treaty 3, Shoal Lake 40. So we recognize and acknowledge the land and all that she gives to us so that we can live a good life and we can have this conversation here today. So, what's up? My name is Michael Redhead Champagne, and I'm very excited to be speaking with all of you today because I am an Indigenous helper, author. I suppose you could call me a relational activist, if you will, from this territory here, and I do a lot of work in and around supporting Indigenous young people, families, and my inner city community. And so Michael Redhead Champagne is a pretty fun name, and it represents, of course, my family's. Redhead, actually, I was born Michael Redhead. My family is originally from Shamattawa First Nation in northern Manitoba, making me a Innu individual. And so for me, being part of this nation has allowed me to carry with me my last name of Redhead. And this last name of Redhead reminds me of the beautiful territory in the north, but it also reminds me of all of the beautiful things that we have in and around our family, the generosity, the laughter, the sharing, the love for the land. And so being connected to these things has been an absolute joy in and around the community here. So there's my Redhead life. But there's also the Champagnes. And so I was adopted. I myself am a product of the child welfare system. But I tell people that I won the Child and Family Services lottery here because I was adopted by the Champagnes, who are a beautiful family that were an emergency foster placement for over 300 children like me that needed a place to be. And out of those 300 kids, they adopted 2, and out of those 2, I'm one of them. And so that's why I say that I won the CFS lottery here, because the example that the Champagnes have shared with me shows me that it is all of our responsibility to take care of all of the children all of the time. And that foundational lesson that they showed me, never in words but always in action, reminded me and are my foundation. So I bring the Redheads and Shamattawa and the Innu folks with me wherever I go. I bring the Champagnes and their generosity of caring for children in the inner city everywhere I go. And it's especially important because the province that I live in, Manitoba, has nearly 10,000 children in care. That's 1/3 of all of the kids in care from all across Canada are just from one province. And we do not make up 1/3 of the population. We are a very tiny piece of the Canadian population. So what that disproportionate number of Indigenous children being separated from their families means is that Manitoba has a child welfare crisis. And why this is so important, as some of you maybe know, we've been grappling with discoveries of unmarked graves at Indian residential school sites. And my mother attended Indian residential school in northern Manitoba, so this is a very personal subject for me. And so it's critical as we are learning about ourselves and our community and what does lived experience mean, is unfortunately for many folks like myself that have been in child welfare, that have a parent that was in Indian residential schools, or maybe something affected by something like the 60s scoop. These different systems of family separation have been happening in Canada and disproportionately negatively affecting Indigenous families. So this is not ideal. We do not like this. And so how would I describe the work that I do? Well, as a family helper, as somebody who wants to support families involved in the child welfare system, it's critical for me to be navigating inside of these systems to make sure that I am amplifying the perspective of families that have lived experience but have never been able to be heard their voice in that space or invited to sit at the table. So I have a model that I'm going to share with you. So if you're somebody who likes to draw things, you're going to love this. This is something that I call the circle of power and influence. All right, and how it works is it's essentially, oh man, my marker isn't working here. Here's another one. How it works is we take folks that have lived experience and we center them. We give them power and we give them influence. So here's the first stage. Step one, people with lived experience. All right, why are they right in the middle here? Well, they're right in the middle because they should, in theory, have the most power and influence over programming, systems, services that affect them. All right, but lived experience people, it's not right or fair for us to be expecting people that have been intergenerationally affected by these systems to solve all the system's problems without support. And so we know, I'm going to switch colors here. So we know that it's important for us to include individuals that have that lived experience but have been able to get out of that lifestyle. So maybe if you're somebody involved, for example, in child welfare, maybe you grew up, or maybe you got your kids back. All right, and so the next circle that we have here is former. So those are people who have former lived experience. They're on the next ring out, and what that means is they have a little bit less power and influence than people that have current lived experience, but they're absolutely essential. And why they're essential is because these people that have the lived experience but have been able to progress, I guess, or move beyond that particular experience are essentially becoming the bridge that we need for the final ring. So here's the final ring. The final ring, all along the outside here, are people that do not have lived experience. So I'm going to call them the non-lived experience people. They're on the outside. All right, and why are they on the outside? Because when we are designing services for people that have been so impacted by systems, so frequently people that are non-experiential have all the power, all the resources, all the support, they direct everything. But if you take this model, this circle of power and influence, you can invert that. And what it requires is that people that are non-experiential to willingly give up their power. I know they say that folks with power will never willingly give it up, but this is exactly what I'm asking you to do here. All right, so folks that are non-experiential have to give their power to people with lived experience, but how do they do that? How convenient. We have this whole group of former lived experience people that can be the bridge. So this is the circle of power and influence, all right? And when I'm working with folks from my neighborhood people are in the center. When I work with young people aging out of care, they're in the center. When I work with indigenous people, they're in the center, all right? And this model works all the time, but it's all about centering lived experience. And that's, I think, how I would describe the work that I do. And so hopefully the result, what motivates me to do it is the fact that it's just been my life living here in this neighborhood to see so many folks affected by child welfare, so many people affected by poverty. And because I've seen systems of family separation, I am so committed to building systems of family reunification, or at least addressing our current systems so they're not hurting and separating families at the astronomical rate that they currently are. So the last question that I have here is, how do you know it's making a difference? And how do I know that my work is making a difference? Well, I know that my work is making a difference when young people are able to age out of the child welfare system and be employed and be housed and be safe and be happy. I know that my work is making a difference when parents are able to fight the child welfare system and successfully address all of the child protection concerns and bring those children home. So reunification is the ultimate goal here. Family systems, strong families is the goal. And I know it's making a difference because I'm surrounded by strong families in this neighborhood. I am surrounded by strong families in the work that I do in the community. And this has only happened because of centering lived experiences. And so there is one more thing I'd like to share with you actually before we go. And what it is a word in my language. So, like I mentioned, I'm from northern Manitoba, and maybe you don't even really know where that is, so very quickly, this is the province that I live in. Okay, this is Manitoba. All right, I live here. This is where I'm recording. All right, but my home community is actually up here. So that's where I'm originally from. So that's where Shamattawa is. But the word I wanted to share with you before we finish, because I think this is the medicine that we all need, is the law of kinship. All right, so the law of kinship in my language is this word, wakotwin. Wakotwin. And so what this word does, or what this teaching describes, is that we are all related to one another. All human beings. You don't got to be blood related to treat somebody like they are your relative. They simply are. Wokotuwin talks about how the humans are related, but it goes beyond that. All right, it's like that teaching that I said about the champagnes. It is all of our responsibility to take care of all of the children all of the time. And so with that teaching, Wokotuwin tells us that not only are we human beings related to each other, human beings are related to the land, we're related to the water, we're related to the animals and the birds and the insects, we are related to the sky, we are related to the stars. And so by being so connected and understanding that there is a law of kinship and we treat everyone in the world as if they are our relative, hopefully in that way we are helping to provide intergenerational healing. And in that way, I hope that we can demonstrate that we can bring families together. And even though the challenges that we're facing seem to be disproportionately affecting Indigenous people, I firmly believe that Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous innovation and Indigenous solutions are going to be the way out of it. And so, no big deal, just Indigenous knowledge is going to save the whole world. And I think that's really what I wanted to finish on, because even from across the sea, all of you are my relatives too. We are Wakotwin. We are kins. We have kinship together. And so I'm honored to be connected to you today. And I hope that if you're interested in some of the stuff I've talked about, you give me a follow on social media platforms. My handle is NorthEndMC. You can find me on all the social media platforms, and I also have a website, michaelredheadchampagne.com. So please come check me out. And before I go, I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for the great work that I know that you're doing, taking care of our relatives that are struggling with many systems. I think that if we can center and empower those voices with lived experience, we can change these systems for the better. We can support families. We can start treating each other like relatives instead of treating each other like clients or strangers. And so let's be relatives, and let's get to work. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate all of you. Have a fantastic day. Sending love, and how you say I love you in my language is gizagitin. It means I love you. Have a good day, everybody.